Welcome to Unstagnate. I'm your host, Almog Flitter. Yes, it's my real name. This is the first episode of Unstagnate, so a little bit about myself and this podcast. I've been obsessed with self-development my entire life, reading books, taking on big challenges, and coaching other people. This podcast is a work of passion. I had the fortune to meet great, inspiring people along the way and learn some lessons in my own journeys. In this podcast, I want to do exactly that for you. Talk to inspiring people with out-of-the-box ideas about self-development and share some of my own lessons. If you're passionate about lifelong personal growth, this podcast is for you. Now, to help us get the show off to a great start, can I ask you for a favor? In the first few weeks of the show, we have the opportunity to be featured in the iTunes store, in the new and noteworthy section. Doing this show is a bit of an experiment. I'm launching with a few episodes and I'm going to see how it goes, but these first few weeks are critical. This is the one chance in the lifetime of this show to really bring in more listeners. More listeners means I could put more of my energy into bringing you great guests. But in order for that to happen, we need reviews on iTunes. Lots of them. They also have to be positive reviews, but that's of course up to you and the actual quality of the show. So, can you please review this show on the iTunes store? If you loved it and want to hear more, please give it 5 stars. You'll be supporting the show. In this episode, we have Chris Manak. Chris is one of Australia's leading dating coaches. He's been featured all over Australian TV and radio, and he's also a good friend of mine. Chris is the best dating coach I've ever met, and I did meet many back when I was a dating coach. I actually paid Chris to coach me once when I was recovering from a breakup and I was down in the dumps. We get to that story in this podcast. Unlike the perception many people may have of dating coaches, Chris is the opposite of sleazy. He's very genuine, charming, honest. He doesn't teach his clients how to manipulate people. Instead, he just helps them by showing them the road to self-improvement is hard, but achievable. Chris is a no bullshit kind of guy. He has unique, simple, and intuitive ideas he got from meeting thousands of women and coaching hundreds of guys. In this episode, we nerd about men's dating and riff on many, many other things. We talk about the most common issues guys face, the real reason why girls don't text back, how your feelings about sex completely change your interactions with women, why it's better to fumble than to be smooth, and a lot more. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Chris Manak. Let's just get straight into it. Chris.
Hi.
I was going to ask you, I've noticed definitely when I was coaching, clients were facing very similar issues and going through similar progressions. Initially it was being afraid to approach. And then getting stuck with conversations, not knowing what to say in conversations. And a lot of the times, they'd be able to have a conversation but not ask for the phone number. Or they would ask for the phone number
and then reflect.
And then they would never get a date. And then they kind of like... do you want to talk about maybe what definitely. You see the biggest 5 issues are for guys?
Yeah, well, I mean...
Are there 5 or how many do you see?
Well, I actually say... firstly, I say to guys when they start and they're frustrated that they can't approach, I say to them, get used to that frustration. Because even when you can approach, that ain't going anywhere. Because then you can approach, but your conversations suck. Then your conversations are going to go all right, but you're going to walk away without getting numbers. And it's just this... It's like the success line is forever moving forward. So, if I... have a guy who's extremely concerned that he can't approach and he can't handle that frustration. It's like, I know it's going to be a tough path for him because even further down the track, the feeling's going to be the same. It's just going to be about a different problem.
Right.
And I tend to say this primarily from what I've seen. There's a beginner, intermediate, and advanced problem. I think the most common beginner problem is guys can't approach. The most common intermediate problem is flakes. So guys, going out and getting phone numbers and people just don't text back or call back, whatever your preference might be. And the advanced problem is when you start to get good and you start to get results, and then of course you meet someone that you really like and you're in this fork in the road. I just started on this personal development journey. I've just started becoming someone that I like. I've just started meeting people and, doing all this cool stuff. But then this girl that I met 2 weeks ago, I can't stop thinking about her. Which path do I go? So I find that's kind of a very...
You've given me so much to unpack here. So, no, really. And so, but I have all of those in mind right now. So let's start with the first one. When guys don't have the balls to approach? Is it just a matter of desensitization to situations?
I think so, definitely, yeah.
Okay,
Hugely.
so you start them off with something very easy, and then what? How much further do you push it? Do you know do they ever go and stand on a table in front of a bar and just try to impress a group of 10 people?
I see some pretty dramatic changes in like just a day. So even my guy on the weekend, Brazilian guy, he's a lovely guy, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me talking about him here. At the start, he was mentioning that the idea seems odd. And I think his last approach for the day was, going up to two, I think they were English backpackers who were here for a couple of months, I think. They were just walking up the street having a chat. He went back and started a conversation with them, and then he ended up leaving with both of their phone numbers, trying to tee up something. Like, it's like, oh, cool, we'll all go out tonight. And they were like, oh, yeah, let's do something, So you can get pretty dramatic. My main aim out of like a one day of coaching is that guys go home going, it's a lot easier than what I thought it would be.
Right.
And look, some guys are different. Some guys, I've coached guys who couldn't even ask for the time. So it depends on the person, but...
Okay,
yeah.
so you make them, you give them the feeling of achievement over something small, and then you use that momentum.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I've certainly done that. I think I told you back in the day that what I used to do with my clients is I would get them to... It was a very good way to smooth people into approaching in the daytime, which is arguably seen as more socially weird. Actually, not arguably. It's definitely seen as more weird than approaching at nighttime. And for them to get over that hump, when we would meet somewhere public, where usually there would be some, like a park where some girls would be sitting around, and I would get one of them, I'd get them to observe that girl and maybe write 10 things they think about her. Just free association. Is she a writer? Is she a student? What does she do for a job? Where has she traveled overseas? But I don't give them any guidance. I just say, write 10 things.
I remember you telling me about that, and that's something I've even incorporated myself, because I think it's something that I did back in the day without the writing. Like, I'd stop and look at people, and I guess now I've got a pretty good eye. I'll look at someone and go, I would say she's Eastern European. I'd say she's new here. I'd say she lives in the city. I'd say she probably, do you know what I mean? Like, get a bit of a feel for reading someone. But I think I have that. Guys will say that all the time. Like, how the hell did you pick that?
You are very good with your hunches about people, and so I would get my students to take that list. They didn't know that that's where it was going. I would get them to take that list to that person and say, "Hey, I'm doing an exercise in people reading, and I'm just wondering how much of this was true about you." And somehow, because they already knew that they were going to say it, they had the list in their hand. It just made it a lot easier for them. And a lot of the times, they found that their mantuition was pretty correct, and that little achievement helped them launch them into more stuff.
Yeah.
Now, since we got into it, do you find that the fact that you have an intuition about someone helpful when you actually are in a conversation?
Hugely, yeah. And that's why I think I get guys to do that, do your little exercise more of just looking at people. And I'll say to people, like, who is she? Be it at night or as well, day, night, whatever. Like, who is she? Don't just walk up to, like, who is she? Tell me who she is. And even if I think two ways it helps you. One, it gives you some ideas to use as an opener, But two, and primarily, is that in your brain, I think that has now gone from a complete stranger, like a cold approach, to some degree a warm approach. Because in your head, even if you're completely wrong, but if in your head you've got this little backstory of who this girl is, which you would have done in your head in 30, 40 seconds, then you'll approach that differently. You'll approach her as though you know her to some degree, and your energy will be different, I feel.
I like it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you another point that I had about doing that is that a lot of guys, you know that experience of walking next to a client down the street, and then they see a girl, they're interested in approaching her, and they go off to approach her, but you can kind of tell that the moment that they noticed her, between the moment they noticed her and the moment that they actually went and spoke with her, the only thing going through their head is she's hot, she's hot, she's hot, she's hot, she's hot. And it kind of like the first 2 seconds you can still, you see them as a person. You kind of like, oh, she looks so arty and interesting. I like her yellow jacket. And then like the moment that they know that they're going to talk to her, it just becomes
she's
high pressure.
Me.
She's above me, but also, that you dehumanize her.
Yeah, definitely. I tell my clients to imagine her taking a shit. But yeah, I mean, that does bother me as well, because it's like, she's still human.
Do you feel that there are some people that are above you? Like, do you ever get that feeling with anyone?
Yeah, definitely. I think we all do. Social standards, it's funny, I have this thing where, I'll joke about certain things where I can generally talk to anyone in a bar or anyone. It doesn't really bother me. Like, if clients ask me to do, I'll pretty much do anything. But if I meet a celebrity that I really look up to, I become a bumbling fucktard. Like, I'll meet like Tim Rogers, or I've met a number of people, a number of celebrities that normal celebrities I don't give a shit. I've walked past. Remember the fucking Queen was here and Oprah was here, and like I was coaching in Fed Square, basically going, get the fuck out of the way. Like, but the people that I look up to, there was Stephen Fry a couple of weeks ago. There's a few people like that. I become an idiot. And I don't think it's that they're above me. It's just kind of like, I can't put all my thoughts into words. Like, I know I've probably only got a minute with you, and I can't express properly how, my thoughts on you, and I just become an idiot.
It's really interesting, and you don't have to express all your thoughts on them. That's the interesting thing. That if you were if you were like your own student, and you were coaching yourself, you'd tell whoever that you don't have to collect all your thoughts.
That's
just go and approach like a human being. It's pretty interesting because it brings to mind a story. I was dating a girl here in Melbourne a few years back, and we went to an Entrepreneur of the Year award, and there was a Social Entrepreneur of the Year award that was presented by Cadell Evans, the only Australian, I think, who's ever won the Tour de France.
Okay.
And when Cadell Evans got off the stage, she just kind of like skedaddled in his direction. He's a very introverted, quiet guy. And she's like, Cadell, hi Cadell. I ride a bike too. It's pink and it has a basket. Can I take a photo with you? And then they got a photo together. And I was just like thinking, wow, she wasn't trying to impress him at all. And I really like that. And when I asked her about that, she used to live in Barcelona. She used to interview famous DJs. And I guess she kind of...
I think it's acclimatization.
Exactly. I think it's very similar. She got comfortable being around people who are quote-unquote celebrities. And, being a dating coach, you got comfortable being around people who are quote-unquote hot. But that's just a label, right? At the end of the day, they're just people. And so, who
probably don't think they're hot.
Who don't think they're hot, or don't feel maybe that it's weird.
I tend to find the most attractive people tend to not think that they're attractive. It's really funny. Both guys that I coach, I've coached literally models,
right?
Like, who don't think they're attractive. And then, I've got some female friends who are very attractive who don't think they're attractive.
Why do you think that is?
I think my theory is that when you're young, you grasp onto your social currency very quickly. So I know for me, mine was, I learned that I could make people laugh, and I grasped to that. Whereas I find that, and for that reason, I never feel that I'm funny enough. Other people who realize, hold on, I'm now 13, people tend to blossom, let's say girls blossom early teens or whatever. They start to realize they're getting attention, and they start, this is my social currency, and I think that because that becomes such an important part of your life, it's never enough. Do you know what I mean? Like you're always, should be better, it should be more. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that intermediate problem that guys have. It's flaking, right? Do you want to explain what flaking is?
Flaking is just, you get a phone number and she doesn't, you text the next day after, you meet her in a bar and you're like, had a good convo, and then you text her the next day, like, hey, it was nice meeting you, I hope you had a good night, blah, 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 and she don't text you back. Or you give her a call and she don't answer and she doesn't call you back.
So what does that... What do you tell people? what's the perfect line to write in a text afterwards? Like what? I'm sure that's what they ask you, right? They get a phone number. They get a phone number.
Yeah.
And then they write, they don't get a text message, so they assume...
My text game.
My text game. The problem has to be with the text that they wrote.
Yeah, definitely.
But
it ain't.
Well, okay, so what is the problem?
The problem is just on some level you didn't click with her. Either she... A really common one is... And this is one I learnt from my female friends. They said that, if a really nice guy works up the balls to come and approach them in a bar or whatever... Look, women aren't inherently bitches, despite what people think. Most women are really, really nice. So if a guy comes up to talk to them and he's doing quite well, and she's like, this is ballsy guy. Like, there's nothing about him that makes me want to have sex with him. So I'm not going to date him or sleep with him. But I don't want to discourage him from doing this again. I've heard this from a few female friends. So they've kind of said, like, they don't... some just don't know how to get out of the situation. They don't know how to say no. And others just kind of, cool. They want to give the guy a bit of like, cool, take my number. Nothing's going to happen. But the guy doesn't read it. This is
very interesting. I have a little anecdote on that. Okay. So I moved to Medellin, Colombia.
Yep.
And I lived there for a while. And one of the things that drives foreigners crazy, assuming that they could already speak basic amount of Spanish, is once they start going out and meeting Colombian girls, literally every Colombian girl, but I mean literally, would give you her number. I don't think that I've been rejected in ever getting a phone number. Now, I would be happy to be rejected at that point, to not get a reply back, because to me that would mean, oh, okay, this isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's a numbers game. I meet enough girls, I find one that does like me back, and we end up going on a date. But they always reply.
Okay.
And not just that, they reply and they're very nice and sweet. And so that's really confusing. And when I asked my Colombian female friends about that, they said exactly the same thing as your female friends here said, which is, I don't want to discourage them. I would feel bad. I don't want to reject. I think... rejection might be really scary for guys being rejected, but it's actually really an uncomfortable situation to be on the other side of.
Hugely, yeah. I've it's going to sound wanky, but I'll have it often enough in a bar where a girl will approach me and have a chat, and you're just friendly, you're vibing, it's a night out, you're having fun, and then you go, all right, I've got to get back to my friends. And they'll say, you should take my number. And it is like when you're on the other side of it, you're like, I don't want to ruin this moment. We've just had a good chat. It's fun. We're both having a good night. I don't want to ruin this by going, nah. Like, it's really uncomfortable. So I can definitely relate to that for sure.
Yeah. And so would you say that guys should actually be kind of thankful when a girl doesn't text them back because they know that it's not going anywhere?
Well, I don't know if they should be thankful or whatever, but one thing they shouldn't be is angry and get pissed off. Like, guys always say, one I hear all the time is like, she could have just said no. And my response is like, yeah, and you could have just not approached her. Like, she don't know you shit, pal.
Right.
So, everyone, that's part of the game. Everyone that's good at this has gone through a flaky stage and still gets the occasional flakes. Like, it's fine.
And so why? Why is it that flaky stage happens, and what happens to get people out of it if it's not like elite text game?
Okay. What bothers me most is when people are in that flaky stage, they're like, oh, I've got to do something different. So they'll start approaching different, having different comments. They'll try all this different stuff when the reality is it's really just reading the situation. So they should, ironically, just keep doing what they're doing and just keep persisting, going, look, this is just another problem. It's going to end soon. And soon enough, one will text you back. And then two will text you back, and it's... So guys are, they'll try something and they'll get flakes. So they'll try something else and get flakes, and then something else and get flakes. And it's like, you should just tweak minor things, sure, and improve naturally, but don't change the whole way that you go about it. Just keep doing what you're doing, because over time you're going to learn to read the situation better and the girl better. And one of my guys last week, he walked away from a good chat, and he said that if he was just starting out, I would have made him probably go back or whatever, but he walked away, and I think it was like week 3 or week 4, and he said, nah, it was a good chat, but there was nothing there, so I didn't
right.
ask. And I was like, right. You're getting it.
Yeah, very cool. And I know that a friend of mine who you actually coached over Skype, he was doing approaches, and I think exactly like that. Maybe you told him that. He just would stop asking for phone numbers if he didn't feel that something was there.
Yep.
Because there is that kind of like beautiful energy that starts flowing when an interaction is going well, but not just going well, that it's going to go to something else beyond that.
I had a guy once who was getting a shit ton of flakes and his conversations sucked because I was listening to them. And for a whole week I said to him, I don't want you to ask no numbers. I don't care if you have the best conversation in the world. This week, my rule, no numbers. You're not even allowed to ask. And that week he had the like best conversations of the entire workshop, because he wasn't conversing to get somewhere. He was just in the moment, legitimately like asking questions because he didn't want anything from it. He knew he wasn't allowed. And his conversations improved massively just from me saying, you're not allowed to ask for anything. Just have a conversation, you know.
What about guys who end up having repetitive conversations? You know, they kind of, especially with logical people, they find that something worked once and they want to use it again, right?
Yeah. I have that when guys will hear some of the stupid shit I say in bars and they'll go, oh, that must be the line, and then they'll go and try it. Just that size.
What's a terrible line that guys used?
Oh, like if because I've done this for so long, I tend to have to keep myself amused, and a lot of the time that's just by saying dumb shit to see what I can kind of get away with. So I'm not really doing it to pick anyone up. I'm just doing it because I've got a 4-hour session ahead of me, and I'm just trying to entertain myself. So I'll say dumb shit, and then guys will go, I got it, and then they'll go and try it. And it's like, you didn't realize that like if I was really trying to get somewhere, I wouldn't have said that. It's just me, So it's funny when they grasp the things that weren't ever intended to work, but they think that's the one. And usually when you don't intend things to work, that's when they work. So I'll say something dumb, and people will respond back.
Okay, I've got one for you, and this one kind of like goes back to a story. So I had a pretty rough breakup in 2011. And knowing myself and knowing how bad rough breakups can be for me, I kind of felt myself staying at home, not doing anything. And I was already pretty okay with dating and approaching, but I just couldn't muster up the energy to do it by myself. And so I contracted you as my dating coach. Now, I didn't necessarily see that I would have to learn that much new stuff, but more just to have some accountability and to have someone supporting me, because I felt like that would help me get over that relationship that I just got out of, is to go out there and meet new people. And so in that situation, you saw me approach, and one of the things that I ended up always doing was kind of like going back to the same line, going back to the same conversational opener. And I learned from you to quieten my mind, which is really terrifying. Quieten my mind and actually not knowing what to say, so that the interaction becomes more spontaneous, becomes more real. And it's actually really hard because, I trained myself so long in it that if I was to go like in the direction of a girl, my brain would already have like 5 ways of starting the conversation, and I'd be like, have to take a breath in and say, no, none of that. Let's just keep it real. And so, I think that's awesome. I think there was a question there, but I'm not exactly sure what it was.
I like that. I like when my guys come back to me and I say, what did you say there? And they go, I don't know. I don't remember. I really like that.
Yeah.
Because it means that they weren't going in with some preconceived idea of what they should say.
Right. But you do teach guys to have like a line to fall back on, right?
Yeah. And I get guys to like, generally I'll say to guys, one I do for quite a lot is like, this is what I would say. This is how I would go about it. So they have a bit of an idea of like, okay, that's what he would do. He'd comment on this, or, just ask how the night's going or something like that. So they start sort of building up a little bit of an idea from just listening to what I would say, but I do, at some point, and especially like when a guy first goes in to start an intro, say a guy's in a bar and he goes in and is like, hey ladies, how's the night going? And they're like, good, how are you? I find that that's when most guys slip into like, fuck. Their brain doesn't really freeze up at the start, it freezes up after they're in. So they use like an open or something, whatever it might be, just get in there. And then it's almost like they don't expect it to go well. So when it goes well and he's got, 2 or 3 heads staring at him, waiting for something next, that's when the guys freeze up. So I do give them sort of, just a couple simple lines like, what are you guys out celebrating tonight? How do you guys know each other? A couple things like that can just kick off the conversation.
Yeah, very cool. What do you find it could be a risk of kind of like canned lines like mine? Is it? I feel that it just takes away from the authenticity of the situation, which breaks away that nice flow between two people where you just feel that instant connection. Because somehow, and that was a big realization for me, I don't know if this is like everyone, but girls know when you're full of shit. They know. And girls are always so afraid of guys learning lines. Like if a guy has learned a lot of lines and you're a woman, you're probably going to notice. You're very much in tune with emotional and social cues. And it will just, something about it will feel off. I think this is how women perceive it, is that something feels off.
Sounds rehearsed.
Yeah.
And there's not much. I like a bit of spontaneity because you're in there kind of going, hi. Like it doesn't sound rehearsed. It almost sounds a bit stupid. So this is the funny thing when guys like trying to get a line perfect. It's like if you get the line perfect before you go in, it's probably not going to... You're better off to go in and fumble your way through it because that's what normal people do. That's what a normal guy would do if he was to go and start a conversation with people. Yeah,
and I remember that one of the things that you do, which I think is pretty hilarious, seeing that that's your job, is that if you get a girl's phone number and you write her a text message, or at least you used to do that, you would write as if you're the most clueless guy in the world, something along the lines of, okay, so how do we do this? Should we meet for coffee or something?
What do
still do that?
What do normal people do?
Yeah, what do normal people do?
I don't anymore. That was pretty fun. But I mean, it's pretty common for guys to look at my text messages and just go, really? Like, hey, it's nice meeting you. How was your night? Literally, that was, that's...
Because they're not responding to whatever amazing thing you said. They're responding to the guy that they met. Exactly. They might want to see again. Right? Yeah, cool. Now, the last challenge that you were talking about is that fork in the road, where a guy started practicing and working on their skills, and then they met a girl, and they think she's great. First off, what a pretty fucking problem, pretty good problem to have, right?
Yeah, sure. Until you're in the middle of it, then it's a bitch.
Exactly. So can you explain like the mindset of someone who's feeling that? Because theoretically they went into it to meet a great girl, and then they meet a great girl. Are the doubts just about whether the girl is great enough?
Well, I think there's a difference between sabotaging a relationship and just wondering if the timing is correct for you. Like I've met some guys and some girls actually, who I want a boyfriend, I want a girlfriend, and then they get it, and then they'll find any reason to sabotage. I think that's different, and it probably goes back to childhood shit, probably goes back to first relationship shit, whatever. But then there's a difference between a guy who, didn't do much with his life until, 28. Then he meets someone like me, or, undertakes a path, and he just kind of goes, you know what, like the next year I'm going to spend... and it's not about picking up girls. It's just about I'm going to become more confident. I'm going to meet some girls. I'm going to improve my job and my health. I'm going to do all this stuff. And it's usually when that starts landing that you become very attractive. So this becomes a lot easier. And then inevitably you meet someone that you really like. And, I've been there. I think you've been there as well. And it's like, I really feel it for my guys because that wasn't part of the plan. But you can't help you can't help feeling what you feel. And it doesn't take away from the girl or anything. I don't think it makes the girl any less or anything. It's just, look, like, this is a guy who set out to spend a certain amount of time improving himself, and then a girl came in stepped into his life or whatever. And it's so it's a sort of fork in the road which way he goes.
Oh, where do most guys take it, or is it a pretty even split?
Yeah, I think it's probably pretty even split, definitely.
So you're saying about 50% of guys would decide that they want to keep working on themselves, and the other 50 are like, this is a relationship.
Literally,
that's what I want.
A conversation I had on Sunday. I'm in week 4 with a guy, and he met a girl in week 2. And
week 2, by the way, when you talk about weeks, you're talking about your my
workshop,
which is 1.5 months of pretty intense work.
Yeah, very intense work.
Yeah.
And they went on a few dates, and I basically said to him, look, dude, you're in your 20s. This ain't going anywhere. Date the girl. If that's what you want, just date. Look, it might last 5 years, it might last forever, it might last 5 weeks. This is not going anywhere. And I think that's the beauty of sort of learning these skills before you do get into a relationship, because then if it works out, awesome. If it doesn't work out, fine. You just back out there,
Yeah. It's pretty funny. I find that sometimes guys going into this stuff, wanting to work on their dating life, are exactly that. They assume that the next girl that they meet or get into a relationship would be one that they'll spend the rest of their lives with. And I remember it, and it usually happens with younger guys. You're right. I was chatting to a friend just recently, and he has this big business that he started building up right now. And at the same time, he met a girl, and he's like, I don't have time for dating. Like, yep. I want a girlfriend. I want someone to hang out with, intimacy and sex. And I met this girl, and, she's pretty all right, but she's not, we don't have an amazing connection. I don't feel like I could talk to her about everything.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm like, it sounds to me like you're asking me for permission for something that you already want.
Already decided, yeah.
And he's like, oh. I'm like, yeah, okay, I give you permission. If I give you permission that it's fine, then is it okay?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
So maybe just hearing it from someone who's a dating coach makes a bit of a difference for guys. Yeah, cool. And so you touched on those issues, working on your life, working on your job, and you tie it all in together. So your lifestyle, the way you think about it is that your lifestyle makes you more attractive as a man, right?
I think so, definitely. And that's something I can speak as a very strong authority on, because several years ago I was the guy going through a couple of girls a week. I was the guy that was out there. Well, you've known me for a long time. I was that guy. And when all that kind of came to a crunch, I ended up in therapy because I was just not very happy, So it's almost like I had guys looking at me kind of going, oh my God. And I was like, dude, I'm so not happy.
Right.
And now I'm probably I'm more chilled out than I have ever been. But, I like my job. I like where I live. I like, I've finally got some stability and all this sort of stuff going on. I'm happier than ever, even though I'm tamer now than I have been probably in the last 7, 8, 10 years or something.
Yeah. When you say tame, you mean like dating wise?
Yeah, just chilling out. Yeah.
And so what is it that you help guys change in their lifestyle? Because they're coming to you and they're like, I want to date more girls. I mean, clearly that's what they're coming in for, right? That's a problem that you solve in their mind, but they end up coming out with more or something different.
Hugely, yeah.
So maybe tell me a story of what you've done for a guy that has nothing to do with dating, or what this process does for guys.
At least 1 in 4 guys that I coach, sounds like I made up figure, it's pretty high, will quit their job either within the workshop or within the couple months preceding the workshop.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it's pretty high.
What do they do?
They just either we discuss it and they kind of go down a certain path, or they'll just randomly come to a session and go, quit my job today. And yeah, which can freak me out because I don't want to be influencing. I want to be influencing, but I don't want them to be regretting any decisions that they made. But one guy said it to me really well once, and he said, I never realized how boring my life was and how kind of stagnant I had become until I started hanging out with you. And it's like then the differentiator became bigger.
Right.
When I was out with you on weekends or whatever, and I didn't realize how much I hated my Mondays until I was having such a good time with you on Saturdays and then having to go back to Monday.
Right.
And that, I thought that was really interesting. I'd not thought about that before.
So what's the kind of general advice you give guys about their life? Because again, I like the fact you're pretty simple, and if I got it straight, does it just boil down to doing more shit you love and doing less shit that you hate?
Yeah. Also, not. I think also doing. Look, I think you've got to set up structures that work for you. Like we were talking before, we went on air about where I do my sprints in the morning. Every day I meditate. Every day I do sprints. I go to the gym a couple of times. I do these things because they improve my mindset. They keep me balanced. They keep me. When you've got a brain like this, you've got to figure out how it operates. You've got to put measures in place. Otherwise, you go fucking crazy. So I think people have just got to realize, okay, where am I going to be in 5 years, and am I moving towards that? Because everyone's got fucking goals. but the difference is, are you moving towards it? Do you know? And it doesn't matter if it's like this, a smaller step every day. Over a year, that's 365 steps. So I think it's a matter of like thinking where I want to be, and am I going in that general direction? And also, what measures am I putting in place that's helping me be fit and healthy? And I don't exercise because I want to be buff. I don't exercise for all this shit. I exercise because I want my mind in top condition. Because I know when your mind's in top condition, your mood's in top condition. When your mood's in top condition, I think then your life is in top condition.
So I think that's one interesting shift that I've seen from myself, is that I always used to chase goals, and then I'd get to that goal, or not, but the times that I did get to my goal, I got to that pot of gold, the other side of the rainbow, which you're not supposed to get to. And then you're like, oh, well, I got it now. Yeah. And then you actually look at yourself and your well-being and your level of happiness as a person, and just achieving the goal in and of itself doesn't actually make that big of a difference in your life. Yeah. And so I've changed my mind and to start thinking more about the things that I regularly do.
Yep.
If I work out regularly, I feel happier. If I meditate regularly, I feel happier. If I do something that helps other people create value, like this podcast, then I feel happier. Yeah. And so it's not about being elated and super joyful all the time, but just a general sense of contentment with your day and meaning in your life.
Yeah. And overall as well, like people that know me pretty well know I can be a moody bitch, and it's ironic that I'm always talking about an overall sense of positivity, because if they see me on an off day, like I was on, was it Sunday, when I was hanging out with someone and she was point blank going, dude. But, I'd barely slept in 3 days. I'd worked for 3 days straight, blah, blah, blah. So I think that's it. It's fine to go down. It's fine to go crashing down. I do. I call it Manic's monthly meltdown. I go crashing down once a month, and, in that time, I reevaluate things. I reassess where I'm at. It's almost like that's the time of the month that I pull out the compass and go, where am I? Like, am I in the right direction? What needs to shift? Right? But it's almost like it takes me crumbling down in order to look at that.
Yeah, you're like the phoenix. You come out of the ashes once a month. Yeah, I think it's a very anti-fragile approach, once a month to expect that meltdown, and also to know what you're doing when you're in those low moments, and not expect life to get super easy. That, one day, this is just a dress rehearsal, and one day life is going to just start. I used to feel that way for a long time. Yeah. That I was in some kind of dress rehearsal for life.
Yeah. It's going to start soon.
It's going to start soon, right? It's very weird to actually...
That's actually what I meditate on. When I meditate, I just kind of go, this is my life. And I do an exercise with myself where I step back and I think, if this was my life for the rest of my life, if I was everything that I am today, if this was it for the rest of my life, how would I find a way to be happy? And it's weird when you do that, because you say, even now you stop and you look and I'm in a nice apartment with a nice view, and I'm sitting having a cup of tea with a friend, and so it's, my goals are to be a financial boss and just dominate the world and fucking influence all these people and do all these amazing things, and you get caught up in that. So what I try and do very often is step back and go, if this is it, if I don't get anything else, how do I find a way to be happy? And it helps me a lot.
Okay. So we've talked about some nice and deep stuff. Let's talk about sex. So clients, people who come to see you, do they have some sexual anxiety? Do you find they have issues around that?
Definitely.
What is the biggest issue that guys have? I mean, you're not with them in the bedroom.
Yeah. Or am I?
Or are you?
There's a variety, sometimes parental influences, religious influences. I've coached guys in their late 20s who were virgins because their parents just instilled in them that sex was the devil's work. Other guys that have just grown up in cultures where sex is just not, it's not, sex here compared to like Japanese culture is vastly different. So there's different anxieties about it, performance anxieties.
And so do you find that guys who have issues around sex, it manifests itself as early as the moment they meet a girl?
Hugely, yeah.
How do you see that happen?
I call it sexual sabotage, because I think if you if you're concerned about getting to the end goal, let's say a seduction is 10 steps. If you know that the 10th step is wrought with pain and suffering and embarrassment, you ain't taken that first step. Or if you do, you're not. I've had clients like that before. They go in and it's almost like they intentionally fuck shit up. And then you dig around and it's like, oh, okay, you're a 32-year-old virgin with massive concerns about sex. I've been there, you know me pretty well. Was it, a couple of years ago, I lost a lot of testosterone and all that. And I felt my own shift because I had no libido. My libido was gone. And I noticed a big difference in my own approach to people. I didn't really give a shit. I was out talking to people just going, oh, fuck yeah. Like, if I take you home, I can't have sex with you anyway, so who gives a shit? And it changes it right from the very start.
So how do you help guys who have that anxiety?
We'll chat about them and see. It depends if it's a lack of experience thing, then it's the same as approaching. They just have to face it head on and they have to go in and get that experience. They just have to... You got to go through it. You can't. I think sex is it's like exercise. You can read all the books on it in the world, but until you've actually had some experience, that's what it comes down to. But then there's also the other guys who have religious influences or who have their parents still chewing in their ear after 20, 30 years, or just think sex is inherently evil. Those guys, I can kind of tweak their thinking. So with those guys, it's just a matter of sitting down and digging around in their brain, I guess.
Yeah. And as you talk about all these things, I mean, one thought comes to mind that I think it was definitely for me. People don't understand how deeply emotionally and spiritually, I don't want to say gratifying, but profound this process of approaching women, confronting your own fears, getting burned in the flame, just your ego melting.
Yeah,
you're just left naked and vulnerable as who you are.
Yeah,
it's a lot more, and for a lot of guys, that's part of what it is. It's just really getting to their core rather than learning how to be a master seducer or something like that.
A lot of guys think it's about piling shit on, learning the techniques, learning all this, but at least the way I go about things is stripping it off, like stripping all the bullshit off.
Now to go back one step, okay, so guys who are a bit more touchy, and I don't mean that in a creepy way, but like people who have like a nice, comforting, warm touch, they seem to create a stronger connection with women. You agree?
Yeah, definitely.
And so how do you teach that to guys? Do you teach that to guys? Because it's a very sensitive topic.
Yeah, definitely.
Because, you meet a woman you've never met before. How do you teach guys how to respect her boundaries? Is there a place where you could touch someone that is comfortable for him?
Yeah, sure. And this is something I probably don't coach, or I know I definitely don't coach anywhere near as much as what I could, just because I don't... let's put it this way, let's say that process we'll call escalation.
Yes.
I see more guys fucking things up because of escalation than I do from not escalation. I know some guys who they will never, they'll be on the 5th date and they still haven't touched the girl at all, kissed her or held her hand or anything. So that's not going to go anywhere. Well, that's going to go friend zone probably. But then I also see guys who, they've read and watched a lot of stuff and they'll be talking to some girl in a bar and after 2 minutes they're like, escalation, I've got to touch her on the back and then the arm, and they just fuck it up. One, because it's creepy as shit. Two, because it takes them out of the moment and they're trying to it's almost like trying to force a square peg in a round hole. They're trying to, I've got to escalate this even though the situation's not calling for it. So they'll be jamming it on there and you see the girl just kind of going, what is going on here?
So do you teach that to guys at all, or do you avoid it? It is very, very touchy. Pun intended.
Yeah. I tend to not. I don't think that comes down to the foundation that I teach. I remember you saying something once that was funny about me, but I think it kind of rings true. You said, this is many years ago, I don't know if you remember it, you said something like, Chris doesn't believe in Kino. Chris's first point of Kino is penetration. I don't know if you said that.
Kino is a word like touch, right?
Like touching, yeah. And I laughed. I thought it was funny. But I mean that, I'm saying that because I think that it's not as necessary as what people think.
Right.
So when I was thinking before of like the naturally touchy people, I'm thinking like of Italian types, Greek types, those guys that have grown up in very touchy-feely families. I've coached many Italian guys, and they do tend to be more expressive and more touch is much more normal to them. I'll coach some guys who will always keep a meter distance, and other guys who will be like, within seconds. But because it's natural to them, I think touch is very powerful if it's natural to the person.
Yeah.
The issue is where guys, like I say, they're not naturally a touchy-feely guy, and they're trying to force it. It's like watching a person who's not naturally cocky try to be cocky in a conversation. That's fucking hilarious. Well, it's hilarious just because it backfires, and it's
very awkward. I understand, and when you talk about it, I kind of see your point. It's body language in and of itself is very complex, and there is that matter there of learning another language. You talk with someone with your words, and at the same time you talk with your gestures, you talk with your body and touch, and to actually stack that on top of like teaching guys to just make basic conversation and kind of like put themselves in the fire, as we've said, is a lot.
Yep.
Is a lot. And some people just take longer, and some people...
Yeah. That pisses me off. That's a question that pisses me off. Like, how am I going compared to your other clients? It's like, dude, it doesn't matter. Like,
right.
I'll have guys who are working these kick-ass jobs and have accomplished so much in their life. They'll be comparing themselves to someone who, is a student.
Yeah.
And so much further behind them in other areas of their life. But they're like, and then he got that number, and then he was going on that date. And it's like, dude, fuck, man.
Put your life in perspective.
Yeah, put your life in perspective. I remember once having a guy who was earning a shit ton of money. Lives in Melbourne, earning a fuck ton of money for his job. And I think he was pretty young. He was quite young. And, something happened, and I think some guy got some girl or something like that. And he was like, life's just not fair. And I'm like, fuck you.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Tell that to the orphan in Africa, right?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
What about those guys who go on, 3 dates and never know when to kiss? I mean, that's a pretty common problem.
Yep.
What do you tell guys who just have that terrible fear of like the right moment? I know a lot of guys want the right moment.
It's
another manifestation of not wanting to be rejected.
Definitely, yeah. My ex-girlfriend, who you knew quite well as well, she used to joke that I only vaguely remember this, but apparently on our first date she was mid-sentence, and apparently I just launched over the table and kissed her within, it was the first date or something like that, and she said it was so awkward, and inevitably we ended up dating for many years, and it was amazing. So I think this whole like right moment, it messes people up, I think.
Right.
They're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for this right moment, and it's like the right moment. They're waiting for they don't want to feel the awkwardness or rejection or something like that.
But I'd say something else beyond that is that, I mean, if you go in for a kiss and maybe she doesn't kiss you back or turn the cheek, it's not your one and only chance.
No,
I think this is what guys, it's a lot of the times it just means not now. Not now.
Yeah.
I mean, no means no.
Yeah.
But also it doesn't mean never.
Yeah, definitely. You're on a date. If I'm on a date and I try and kiss a girl and she pulls away, I think it's how you respond afterwards. So, mine is I'll kind of giggle and go, hey, can't blame a guy for trying. Anyway, where are we, and then just moving on, and then trying again in a couple of hours' time, so...
And I think it's pretty unattractive for a girl to realize that a guy could be so destroyed.
And that's,
by just having a cheek turned to him when he goes in for a kiss.
Yeah, I always say to guys, like, if you make it awkward, it's game over. Like, you try and kiss a girl and she pulls away and you're like, oh, I'm sorry, like, I didn't, like, why? Why don't you want to kiss me? It's like, dude, that's the worst thing you can do. Because it just, one, it shows the girl that you just have no backbone. Two, all your emotions are dependent on her. She's like, I think that's a big thing. Like, girls need to know that you are kind of the master of your own emotions, regardless of what happens here. I think girls need to know he's okay if I say no. If I ask him out, if he asks me out and I say no, he's like, oh, that's fine, that's cool. Well, maybe we'll catch up in a couple of weeks when you're less busy or something like that. Yeah. That's when she's much more inclined to see you than like, why not? That guy.
Okay, this brings me to another interesting question, because what you're talking about here is neediness, right?
Yep.
Now, the thing is, a lot of people who come to a dating coach tend to be needy.
I think we're all needy. We're all fucked up. We're all
Okay.
humans.
Well, what's your opinion on that?
About everyone being fucked up?
Yeah. Why are we all needy?
If you take out, fucking Zen Buddhist monks who probably aren't needy.
Yeah. Fuck those guys.
I think, and this is the thing it's funny being in the position that I'm in, because people just assume I just have everything. You just, when I went through that breakup that I was mentioning before, people were just like, what's the problem, dude? Like, you're Chris Manak, just go. And it's like, I have a heart, right? Like, it's a little broken at the moment. Like,
yeah.
So, I think we're all working on shit. We're all, I've come certainly a long way, but I'm still working on a lot of shit, So.
Okay, I'll get to the point that I was trying to make, is that, guys who come to dating coaches tend to be needy. Now, on one hand, you want to teach them to get into an interaction, and correct me if this is not in line with your philosophy, but to get into an interaction and see, hey, you know what? Is this girl right for me? Or is she not right for me? Do I want her in my life? Or is she going to take away from my life?
Yeah.
Because girls can kind of sense if you're the kind of guy who would just leap at an opportunity to be with anyone. Now, how do you take a guy who really is in that place in their life where they're kind of willing to be with anyone because they're that needy?
Yeah.
And you kind of like combine that, because I find that was one thing that it was very hard for me to teach, is to actually teach guys to have standards in their lives with the people that they date.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things where masochistically, I think sometimes you've just got to let people drive that fucking fire engine straight into the China store. Like, because if I sit there and kind of go, look, you've just started on this path, and this is the first girl that you've met. This might be the miraculous one that, I do have some instances where a guy meets one girl and then they end up together. That's great. But most of the time, it ain't the first girl that, you might go on a couple of dates, but realistically, she's probably not going to be the one. If you do want to settle down, that's, likely not. So I could sort of sit them down and say, point out factually and logically and all that, but sometimes I think, you've just got to go, you need to do what feels right for you, and I'll be here. When it fucking goes crashing down in flames. And I've had this many times where a guy will be like 2 weeks or something into a coaching with me, and I'll meet a girl, and I've had this happen a number of times where guys are like, I don't know if I need the rest of our time. I've got my girl, I'm pretty sweet. And I always say to these guys, it's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. I'll hold on to your money, and then if in 2 weeks' time you're still good, then I just refund, pro rata refund it, and then. But if in that time, and pretty much every time they come back kind of going, all right, let's go finish those sessions. Because what happens is, when he meets the girl's like, oh, hey, this is a guy that's doing cool shit. He's out, because guys have that. Guys have a vibe. Guys have a feel when they're out trying to improve themselves. They have a feel about them.
Right.
So the girl finds that attractive. Then the guy just axes all that shit and throws it on top of her, and suddenly she's like, not so sold on this anymore, and tends to pull away, and that can happen a lot, yeah.
Right. What about actual, standards with women? One of the things that I thought kind of like used to drive me crazy is seeing guys hanging out with girls, just for sex, while deep inside they had no respect for them as people.
Yep.
And I'm not saying like what drove me crazy here is necessarily that they just want to have sex. That's not what drove me crazy, but more that what they were doing to themselves, as well as the girl, kind of like maybe making her feel like she's just a sexual object, but also to themselves.
Yeah.
They were just putting themselves in a situation where they had to spend time with a person they didn't respect. That can't be good for someone's integrity.
Yeah. I
right?
also think on some weird level, this is going to sound really woo-woo, but I think we absorb energy when we have sex with someone. I think in some very, very minute detail, our aura, whatever the fuck you want to call it, absorbs some of that. So I know a big thing for me is like, if I'm sleeping with a girl or, whatever, even maybe to some degree just hanging out with a girl, but probably more so sleeping with her, is this someone that I wouldn't mind being a little bit like? Do you know? Because if I'm absorbing some of that energy from her, is this someone that I'm willing to give some of my energy to, and someone that I'm willing to absorb some of their? Because I really do think that happens. Like, you can feel the difference if you're dating a girl who's this, girl A versus girl B.
No,
and
for
girl
sure.
B's, yeah.
For sure. You know what? That's a great question. Would you mind being a little bit more like this person? The question that I used to always ask myself, would I be friends with this girl if it wasn't for the fact that I was attracted to her?
Interesting, yeah.
And so I'll tell you where this comes from. I was in a dinner party one time in someone's house here, and there was an English guy. And he was telling me how he's going to go back to England in a few weeks. And then he just had the biggest smug, super happy, excited look on his face. And he said, and I'm getting married.
Okay.
And I'm like, wow, man. Like, not a lot of guys are that visibly excited about marriage.
Yeah.
A lot of girls seem to be more excited about it than guys. And asked him, what's your secret? Like, I'm actually really curious. What is it about your relationship with her that you're so excited? And he said, it's simple. I'm fucking my best friend.
Damn, that's awesome.
And first off, awesome on him to actually have that answer ready.
Yeah.
Because he did.
Yeah.
But yeah, that really, really stuck with me.
Yeah.
That really stuck with me. Okay, cool. So to wrap things up, Chris Manak, you spell your name Manak.
Yep.
But conveniently and confusingly, your website is Manic Workshops, MANIC.com.
Yeah, didn't think that through.
.com or .com.au?
.com, yeah.
Then the other were your course, your up-and-coming course is datingcourseformen.com.
Yep.
Any other way that people can connect with you, or something else you want to tell people before we wrap things up?
Follow me on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. I'm trying to put out, one of my main goals for this year is to put out more videos, because I'm really enjoying putting videos. So, Chris Manak on Instagram, on YouTube, Facebook.
Chris, thanks so much for chatting today. Always great to hear your insights about life.
My pleasure.
Hi guys and girls, I hope you enjoyed the first episode of Unstagnate. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I plan to get you a lot of other great guests on the show. If you're looking for show notes, go to unstagnate.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed the show, subscribe and review us on iTunes, especially in the first few weeks of the show. It really, really helps. Until next time, I'm Almog, and this has been Unstagnate.